In other words, because then you can start to understand what the common denominator, like what the person is trying to say. Like when you say it in slightly different ways, slightly different times, slightly different examples, the mind is able to learn the main point. I don't know, I feel it's one example is like nice, but if it doesn't hit home or if it hits home and then you forget it. So I think it's the way we learn is by reiterating in slightly
Mm.
different ways. So
Mm. And of course, what we have with a lot of that is a how can I describe it? A protective resistance that turns up. You know, we tend to hang on to um, a way of looking at things because it's served us in the past, even though it hasn't taken us fully into or fully out of suffering.
yeah.
Um, it's it seems better. So that one of the, I mean, I've been all day today really playing different songs. I'm trying to put them up on SoundCloud so that people can get at all of them at one go, kind of thing. But one song that's been going around and around in my head is, you know, how we just let go of, allow the flow to happen, recognize that control, that when we talk about the fear of letting go control, is really about recognizing that we never had control, that there's not actually any letting go. There's not any letting go of actual control.
Uh-huh.
There's only letting go of the idea of control. But
Mm,
we experience control as being in control, not recognizing that it's an illusion. So it feels like we're letting go of actual control when we do that. And did I don't know if I've sent you the song that I've made about that one, but I was thinking of you and I was listening to it today. Um, how do we how do we recognize that we're not actually letting go of control, just that that the well, just that the letting go is not even that's not something we can do. But if we imagine it happening, then we will discover that things continue and things happen as they always have, and that all there is this thought after story that we controlled it, we did it. Now, moving that one into a realization is one of the biggest ones. That's a really hard one. How do we do that? How can that happen? It can only be discovered, and it can only be discovered when we experiment with what actually goes on, not adding a job of experimenting, but rather experimenting as a way of looking at what actually happens. You know, so I say there's a million examples every day of things happening without control, and yet
yeah.
we still want to believe that things happen because we make them happen. And I know that's a big one for you. So you feel like,
I mean, it seems like some things happen, like our heart beats, but other things it seems like only when we have intention or try really hard. But yeah.
yeah, but you don't have intention to place your feet when you walk, do you?
Me personally, I do, but I'm just really mindful. But um,
So every step you take, you have an intention about it, do you?
I would say there are and have been some days where almost every move I make is under awareness, under trying to be a certain way, trying to have my posture, trying to have this. So there, do not underestimate the limits of my trying to control and perfect experience and alleviate
Sure.
suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been through a lot of body practices that talk about a lot of stuff. So, and have to do with attention to minute movements of the body and posture. But no, not all day, every day. But
So, what have you experimented with variations on that one? So let's, for example, imagine that that you're going to think about the next words that come out of your mouth, but what you do is you intentionally put your focus on how you're feeling in your left foot, and then let speaking happen. That kind of an experiment. Have you done anything like that?
put my attention on my foot and let speaking happen about that.
Let speaking happen about what we're talking about now. So as we have this discussion, instead of you thinking about what words are gonna come out, think about your foot instead, or anything. Think about pick something else. Doesn't matter. Think about your left foot is just an example. Is it possible for you to think of your left foot and talk at the same time about this stuff?
No.
So you will think about your left foot, and then you will stop thinking about your left foot and think about what you're going to say.
Let me think. Kind of switching very fast back and forth, I think.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I think where I've been the past few days is um I've been kind of where I want to be, where I like to be. There's like a calmness in the body and the mind, and I'm at those places that I like, where like I went to my sister yesterday to help out, and she was slightly more civil than normal, probably because she needed me, but who knows. Anyway, um, I stayed with the kids and her for a few hours, and she was screaming a lot. And as she saw that I didn't run, she was even screaming more and louder. And I was just able to, in the past, not in the past, but there are times when she'll scream at the kids, and I'll either like make a face to let that, like, I'm always ambivalent because I want them to know that they're supported and that I don't approve of this and that I notice that she's yelling and it's not about them. Like, I'm trying to like convey subliminally like my disapproval and my love for them all in the same like screwy
Mm,
face
mm,
or some kind of thing like that. But today, but again, she wasn't, actually hitting them, and she wasn't being cruel. She was being more letting out frustration. So there's different types of yelling. Um,
mm,
and so this made it all possible. In other words, if she had started to like violently drag them or something like this, I wouldn't have been able to. In other words, even small cruel actions like that, I wouldn't have been able to stay, I think. But it was her letting out frustration a lot and loudly, while intermittently being like, "Do you guys want to eat?" Or in other words, she goes back and forth between being calmer and screaming. And I was just able to sink into whatever you want to call
mm.
it, presence, into peace, into whatever, and just keep on shining love at everyone. Very, very calmly. I was just kept on being calm, talking to the kids. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that. If they started to scream, I was just staying in my calmness. Um,
Right.
I don't know. Like, I've done that also with a jackhammer. I've done that with a pain. And at the times that that succeeds, I consider that a good enough day. Like, I was able to stay in my peace despite extreme vibrations to the contrary.
Right.
But
So what do you get that if you had control, you'd be able to do that? all the time?
I really want to, yes.
Hmm. So when you can't do that, it's obvious that you don't have control.
Or I'm just doing something wrong or haven't figured it out yet, or I have to go to the Himalayas and I'll have control, or
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Switzerland and I'll have control, or
right.
live.
So do you also get that when you think that control is um, conscious volition, that you also think that your sister has control about her yelling, her frustration?
Yes.
And so
And
that
that's why we
makes
blame each other. That's the only reason we blame, because we think people can do better if they tried. And that's what I tell myself. And that's
right,
what I think
right.
about others.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I put it to you just as a possibility. Well, what I see it as more than a possibility, but I put it to you to consider the possibility that she doesn't have control.
Yeah.
In spite of, if she were able to summon an intention that was strong enough, it would flavour what happened. That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? That one. It seems a bit like that, but still, if that happened, that she was able to summon a strong enough intention to affect the outcome is still something that's not actually in her control. It just appears to be because she's summoning an intention. And it's like she has to be willing and want that to happen for it to happen. But where does that come from? Even that is something that's dependent on conditions much more than it's dependent on willpower. So what if
Yeah.
we allowed you to say, okay, yeah, all right, there is control, but it's not controlled by you, by a self in you, but rather by the culmination of conditions that are present, circumstances. That's what allows something to happen. That's what creates a possibility for a happening. And those conditions,
Wait, say it again. Are you talking about her now or about me?
I'm talking about everything,
Okay.
right? Not just so that includes her and you, that it's conditions that create the possibility of a happening occurring. And one of those conditions, or a couple of those conditions, are our own internal machinations. But a lot of the other conditions are not under our control. Conditions like, for example, how tired we are. Obviously, if we're tired or sick, right, then we willpower has a lot less effect, doesn't it? That's conditions. I mean, we don't control whether we're sick or whether we're exhausted. If we happen to be in an exhausted state, then of course we can't summon a strong enough intention to have an effect like we could if we're feeling good about ourselves.
I agree, but that's where I get into, well, clearly you've lived your life wrong because you're tired. That's on you. You should figure out by now this life. And this is very personal for me. This is how I feel. In other words,
Yeah.
if I figured out my circadian rhythm and should I be waking up at dawn or going to sleep late? In other words, if I figured out all those things about when to wake up, how much sunlight to have, how much social time to have, how much anxiety to let build up or not, to
Righto.
exhaust me
Okay.
enough to
So
get to sleep on time, never be sick, move
yeah,
to Switzerland, etc. Like, how could I manage my life so that I don't get to those places? And I think it's
yeah. All right.
exhausting to try and be in control of all the uncontrollable. So some
Okay.
people are more go with the flow, but
So let's say you do that. Let's say you make sure that you go to bed at a good time so that you give yourself enough time to have a good sleep. except that it just happens to be one of those times when you lie awake for a large part of that time, or you wake up multiple times in the middle of the night, and you're awake early in the morning, even though you've only had a couple of hours actual
Well, that's
sleep.
been my entire life. That's exactly my life where I'm trying to control the
Right.
uncontrollable, which is illness, health, conditions, weather,
Yeah.
noise. And I'm still trying to figure out maybe if I move to Switzerland or to this or to that, I'll have fresh, clean air. And then in other words, to figure out if there's a
Right.
way that
Yeah.
could be better. And I know it involves multitude of things, hence why my mind is running as much as you guys hear it, because I'm trying to compute the
Yeah. Yeah.
uncomputable.
Mm. So let's say you're right about all of those things. You, if, but the reality is you're not in Switzerland. You're not got clean air. You've not got a relaxed environment around you. That is all uncontrollable stuff, isn't it?
Well, in my mind, I'm a big girl and I should have figured this out by now, and I should have courage and moved to a new country on my own with no support, because if I was brave and had mental fortitude and stoicism and all the rest of it, if I was a decent person,
Right.
I would effing figure this out already.
Well, you're a hard taskmaster, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. You're not gonna give yourself an inch, are you?
It's just a little sad, I feel, because
Mm.
I've been grieving a lot lately as well. Like, because I'm starting to a little bit, yes, let go of all of this and not push so hard for all of these. And that means I have to let go of the fact that my body may still have this Crohn stuff and I may not be able to lick it. Maybe I still can, but maybe I don't have the power to bulldoze through like I used to. And maybe,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, thought I could save my nephew from the effects of having such a mother. And I see him getting tied to her, and his whole, it's like a tree winding around a gate. It's like, in other words, he's becoming attuned and working within that system, because people need parents and that's what they do. And he's a sensitive, lovely, lovely soul.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I thought he could entrain onto me and not onto them. Like I could be like a surrogate,
Mm.
pseudo mother that
Yep.
could get
Yeah. Yep.
regulated that. But I,
Well, I'm imagining that that still happens, that he sees an alternative in you, but even though he's living and getting conditioned by the his own mother.
yeah, and it's so toxic and volatile because there's so many screams and then there's love bombing, screams and love bombing intermittently, and it just drives the brain crazy. And I see it happening, and it's so painful to not be able to stop these things. I don't know. I get a lot of like the potential of the world versus what is, and
Mm.
it it's incredibly painful to have an image and not have it come to fruition, and see instead negativity happening and people being shaped in these ways that they grow up to hatred, to anger, to hatred of self, to whatever it is. I just
Mm. Mm.
it's so hard on me to watch this in the world in whatever way, people raising their kids to believe so many harsh things about themselves and others. So it's I
Yeah.
get the what we're doing with the non-duality and the stuff, and it's about, and I want to bring peace to this one because this is the only one I can bring peace to, and then I can be more at peace in the face of people screaming, and that does something and I realize it. But yeah. And again, like on those days when I can be that peace, when I can sink into peace and bring that with me where I go, and be that in the face of others screaming, and I've done that a lot in my life. I like that. And I think, okay, at least I have a purpose. At least I'm being a point of peace in this universe. That's what I want to be here.
Mm.
When I can't do it, it's very, very hard on me. And that's where I come here in frantic energy and I'm berating myself and beating myself. And I'm just really bewildered. It's like I can be so calm and
Yeah,
sane.
yeah,
Other
yeah.
days
I
I'm
get that.
completely whatever. Anyway, I don't know if there's anything anyone can solve, but I'm here trying my darndest. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a trick, isn't it? Because when you are that way, you take credit for it, and that's where how you beat yourself up when you're not that way. You're saying, "Well, I was able to do it before," but you're there because not because you did it. You're there because circumstances lined up for that to be possible. That's the way I see it.
and also like I could also want to scream and curse and hit. In other words, I could want to be like my sister or my mother, but I feel that a lot of the tension and anxiety around the self and the identity and wanting to be a good person keeps me from doing that. When you say that people will be their nature, that and like to just but uncontrolled, then maybe that is my nature when I'm uncontrolled. So I'm not entirely sure about
No,
the
no.
relaxation thing,
So
but
just let's be clear about that. When I said be their nature, I said be their fundamental nature. That's at least well, that's what I meant. You know, so the fundamental nature of being human isn't to be that way. People are that way because they're broken to various degrees. So that's a different story, isn't it? It's not separate. It's a little bit tricky there because, you know, we are conditioned and what we want to do is undo some of the conditioning, but it's not appropriate to undo all of the conditioning. Otherwise, we can't operate in society. We need some of our conditioning in order to operate. But the difference is whether we're a slave to our conditioning or whether we adopt it willingly, so to speak, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but nevertheless, it's a way of looking at it. So your fundamental nature and your mother's fundamental nature and your sister's fundamental nature is not to be what you're describing. That is the nature as a result of being broken, of being conditioned to be that way. And if you trace it back, if you do your genealogy, I'll bet you'll find that your mother is that way, your sister is that way because of your mother's training, and your mother is that way because of her mother's training, I'll bet.
no, her
Without,
mother was lovely.
okay, then something in her life circumstances broke her, caused her to be out of balance.
I used to believe like you, Vince, that everyone is fundamentally good, smart, strong, intelligent, wise, and that only, circumstance would cause otherwise. I'm not sure anymore. I'm
Mm.
really not sure anymore. I think people have different levels of intelligence, of ability, of athletic ability, of health, and of
Oh
goodness.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel
That's not a conflict for me. I agree that we all have different levels. Everybody's got their own essential level of brain functionality or whatever is involved in what we call intelligence and so on.
but attunement to others or to self, kindness or selfishness, I feel that can be, I think, affected a lot, but maybe not completely so. In other words, if everyone is awake, you think there would be no murders and no crime?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it's a theoretical situation, but would that be the case? I don't know that. See, everybody is going to have their own level of awakeness as well. So, you know, it's an impossible scenario to kind of presume that everybody will be the same. So everybody, what people wake up, everybody is absolutely unique. Everybody is going to have their own experience. So even though we might talk about what is common between them, at a even slightly detailed level, everybody is really unique, which is a bit of a tricky one. So, yes, I don't know, but that's the case. I mean, that brings to mind a TV show on Apple called Pluribus. Um, and that's excited that consideration for me. And what happened in that series, it's obviously a science fiction series, but it starts with an experiment in a lab, and what happens is somebody gets bitten by a lab rat, and then and that affects them, and what they then do is infect everybody around them, and what it seems like is that the whole world, and it turns out to be some kind of an alien infection, the whole world shares all of the mental knowledge and experience of everybody else, all except for 12 people. And so the story is centered around one of those 12 people, or a couple of those 12 people, but essentially it follows one of them. But yeah, the conceptual nature of everybody sharing everybody else's thoughts and experiences uh, is really interesting. It's a great show from that perspective. And,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden there is no crime anymore. There is no, and everybody's really cooperative because everybody knows what everybody else knows, not just in terms of knowledge, but shares their experience as well. So everybody can be a surgeon, everybody can be a pilot, everybody can do anything that anybody else has learned how to do because they share all of that stuff. Now, it's
Mm.
really an interesting concept. So, who knows what would
Yeah.
happen if we were all awake? Would that be happening? Well, I don't know that it would be happening in the way does in the movie, but certainly it would be closer to that because we would all have compassion and empathy and be non-judgmental about each other. So,
Hmm.
yeah. But see, you've got to stop being judgmental about yourself before you can be non-judgmental about others.
I guess maybe it does have to do with that control thing, but
Mm.
still think that if I just tried harder, I could be better. I could be at peace all the time and not this crazy. It's like it's it's also this whole thing about waste of potential is also how I feel about my life. It's like, what is wrong with you? You've been here for several decades now. You haven't figured this out yet. What is wrong with you that you're still caught up in emotion, brain fog, ADHD? Like, focus for goodness sake and build a life that makes sense rather than being
Yeah.
bewildered, confused, and spend my time like on indecision and how to answer people's text in a way that is truthful but also gets my point across and also like I spend my time on such nonsense and don't build a life for myself. And I'm so down that I can't make my mind focus and live really productive, wonderful days. Like, what is wrong with me that I'm still
Well,
struggling so much?
yeah. So stop, Tammy. Listen, I don't know you very well. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't. But I'll guarantee that if I asked everybody that was in your life about you, they would tell an entirely different story than what you tell. And they would see you as being very productive and very creative and very helpful and very, 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 very just that you think that they can only see a superficial level of you, and what you're describing is a deeper level of you. Right? But I've no doubt that people around you love you. People around you. maybe, maybe not your sister, that's a different story. But the people in your social life, the people in the chorus, the people in your that where you play music, those people, they're going to see you entirely different than the way you see you. Would I be right, do you think?
Um, Maybe the people in the chorus. Um, Everyone has their own view of me. Yeah, everyone has their own view of me, and
Mm.
I have a view of me in everyone else's eyes. I think some people think I'm like corny or overexcited or too enthusiastic, and some people think I'm really cool. Like this woman wouldn't stop talking to me yesterday after choir, and I'm like, what does she want? And then I realized, oh, maybe she thinks I'm the cool teacher and she wants to speak to me. So like everyone will have their own view, but
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
me, I know the truth because I'm with me and I see how much time is wasted and spent in confusion and sadness. I mean, what is this bull crap? Like, get with the program, Tammy, and like have a good, productive life. But yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I was. Yeah, sorry, you were gonna say.
Yeah. Well, how about this for a story? I'm being a bit provocative here, but one day Tammy's going to wake up and Tammy is going to have a huge realization about the shift from where she is now into what it's like to be awake. And the consequence of that, one of the consequences of that is that she is going to be a brilliant teacher, a helper to help other people wake up. How's that for a story?
Interesting. It kind of makes sense because that's what I've been doing my whole life, I think. In
Yeah,
other words, whatever I realize or whatever awakeness I'm privy to, I immediately want to be that for
yes,
others and express it to whoever can hear it. But
yeah. And because it's a, a wonderful experience, you want that for others. That's part of your fundamental nature to be big-hearted and empathic and compassionate and so on. But because you've been where you've been, that makes you eminently more able to relate to people who have their version of where you are now.
yeah.
That may or may not happen, but it's a good story. I like it. I kind of imagine that everybody who wakes up as a result of being involved with others on the path, as well as me in these meetings and so on, that they all want to pay it forward at some point. And that's how eventually the whole world will be in a much better place than it is now.
Mm.
I may be well and truly dead by the time that happens, but nevertheless, it's just part of it. It's the way it is. Yeah.
No, I think what you do already ripples outward. In other words, I don't have to be fully awake to have more peace about these, from these meetings and be able to have small changes when I relate to others that already spreads more
Yeah.
peace, acceptance, whatever you want to call it.
Yep. It's I imagine the most productive thing that I could ever do and that
Mm,
anybody could do.
mm.
Yeah, let's bring peace and joy to the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote a song. I haven't. You'll actually hear it tomorrow. It's released. I put it out on Christmas Day, and
Mm,
one of the songs I wrote about was um, Christmas. Christmas ignites a flame in everybody's heart, and let's keep it there all year round.
mm, mhm,
So, I mean, with your sister, this is a classic example. That let's presume, just for the sake of looking at it from a different perspective, that she's not in control, that something in her conditioning caused her to end up like she is, right? Away from that fundamental human nature of loving, compassionate, empathic acceptance of others, that non-judgmental thing, right? Let's presume that somewhere we don't know about some of her conditioning. Something happened, not maybe not one thing, maybe it was a constant flow of stuff at a certain stage in her life. Um, who knows? Maybe it was something that she's blocked out and doesn't even remember anymore, or maybe it's something that she just doesn't like to talk about, or whatever it was. Something transformed her from being a, a, an essentially loving, tolerant person into what she is now. If that's happened, and that's the way I see that that does happen, then even if especially if she's blocked it out and doesn't even remember what caused that, and she's been years and years like this, so it's become quite habitual for her to be like this, then what she expects is that people will be a certain way with her, and she kind of provokes them to be that way, not consciously, but just by being the way she is, she provokes reactions, which then confirms the way she is. So it's a bit of a circular thing that goes on. So how can it happen that we can somehow affect, even in a minor way, that that circular nature of that whole thing? And what it is by us being non-judgmental, by us being compassionate and empathic towards her rather than judgmental. And the consequence is that people are different. I don't want this to sound like arrogance, but really, there are no arseholes in my life. And yet I know people to be arseholes with other people, but they never like that with me. And why is that the case? It just, I can only imagine it's because I tend to not be judgmental towards them. I don't respond in that way. I'm interested in what's going on for them. It's not manipulative. I don't do that on purpose. It's just the way it works. And I wrote a song about this too, and because we had a massacre here uh, in Sydney, um, in Bondi, and it was some people that went and got trained with ISIS, and they shot up a Jewish ceremony, Hanukkah, I think it was, um, and wow, ever since the news has just been totally taken up with this stuff about we've got to hate the haters, the people who hate enough to do something like shoot up people, innocent people. We've got to hate them, and so therefore we've got to criminalise them, and we've got to whatever. And then nobody's even suggested that there is a mental health issue involved in the whole thing. So anyway, I
I
wrote
see.
this song that
Yeah.
said, "There's no evil in the human heart. There's just people that are broken. That's all." That's one of the songs that's really stayed with me. I've it's affected me in a big way, and it's just something I want to scream out to the world. You know, we've got to stop hating the haters because all we're doing is making it worse. If we stop hating the haters and understand that the haters are hating because they're broken, then we can do something about the cause, right? Not after the fact, but before the fact. After the fact, we bring in the police
Mean by do
and
something about the
criminalize it. Sorry.
what do you mean by do something about the cause?
Well, what? Why do people hate? Why are there all these right wing people out there, you know, doing Nazi salutes and being really racist about everybody and so on and so on? That's because they're really insecure. They're broken. Well, what we need to do is we need to provide them with understanding and compassion and listen to them and not judge them in a way that we do. Well, that doesn't mean that we tolerate it and don't put up boundaries. What it means is that we have to understand that there's a reason why they're like that. And so instead of saying, we're going to punish you if you're like that, which doesn't change anything, it makes it worse, if anything, right? We can throw them in jail where they can get together with other haters and plot something really serious. But if we were to treat it as an illness that needs to be looked at and understood and treated in a certain way, then we can do something about the cause of it. So, so instead of us spending $17 trillion on nuclear submarines in case there's a war, if we put a fraction of that into mental health, all of a sudden we could change the way things were in our education system. We could change the way things were in our police system. You know, people become police because they're haters frequently, not always, but frequently you find that police are pretty right wing, aggressive attitudes. And it's because they're feeling bad about themselves right from the beginning, and this way so that gives them the opportunity to feel better. They feel like they're doing something good. They start off with saying they're going to do something good, but they're wanting to feel good in themselves. I mean, there's no
I think there's some that
easy
is,
answer. Yeah,
yeah.
go on.
No, I think there's some that is mental illness, and I think some is ideological. Some people believe it's the right thing to do to shoot up others. In other words, they're taught
Yeah,
that
sure,
they're
yeah, but why do
in
they?
of
Why do they
God.
think that? How can they possibly think that? I mean, there's no
It's
logic to
part
it.
of some ideologies, Vince. It is part
Yeah,
of some ideologies that shooting up other people that don't believe in what you believe is a good thing.
yeah,
That's what
that's
they
right. But that
believe, and that's what they're taught from childhood. So,
Yes, so there you go. There's where things go wrong. They're taught that from childhood by
but we're
people
not in
who are
control of
already
those
broken.
ideologies,
Sorry.
right? But we're not in control of what whole groups teach their children. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, we could be. For years ago, I really wanted to see mindfulness introduced into schools at a kindergarten level and be taught as an actual subject all the way through school. Right. So that was an ideology that I had that never happened, but there is some of that going on. But essentially, if we were to teach kids from kindergarten about the nature of mind and thoughts and the effect that they have on us and how they do things, right? Then all of a sudden we wouldn't have bullying in school. It's those bullies that end up, you know, and why do people become bullies? Frequently because they've been bullied. You know, that's the way people get around that feeling of helplessness for being bullied. They become bullies, and it goes on and on throughout their life. We've got to break that cycle somewhere. Now, it'll take at least 3 generations for something like that to happen, but it is possible. But we've got to start, and we're not starting. What we're doing is we're increasing the the punishment, and we're making a big deal. We're putting on more police, and we're getting stronger with our corrective behaviours, and so on and so on. Uh, we're in Australia. We're now making laws about guns. Where there's a big gun buyback about to happen, and we're doing a whole thing about guns, like as if people who want to shoot up people couldn't get a hold of black market guns. How crazy is that?
Mm.
We're gonna spend millions and buy back everybody's guns and make laws so that people can't have 7 guns like the shooters did have, but they're only going to be allowed to have 5 guns. How ridiculous is that? You know, and yet we're not doing anything about where we could do something, which is at the education system level. So we need to put money into education. We need to put money into hospitals. We need to put money into mental health. We need to do that instead of less and less and less every year, which is what's actually happening, so that we've got enough money to buy more
It's
military
a little bit
equipment.
it's a little bit of I don't know. I fully know what you're saying, Vince, because I myself have these dreams. But it seems like it's not just the education, it's the family and the parents that each child comes from.
Absolutely.
Who's
I
gonna
agree.
love
Yes.
those
Yeah.
parents and heal them? In other words, it's just like it seems there's not enough. In other words, the teachers in the schools to have people that are awake enough to bring compassion both to the kids and to the parents. In other
Yes.
words, there's not enough people that are awake enough to to make this change. It is, I guess,
Yep. Yep.
but it could be. I mean, that would be an incredible shift. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I don't see it happening
yeah,
in my lifetime. But maybe we can move in a slightly in that direction. That's all. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
yeah.
Mm. I mean,
But forget that. Yeah,
those two people. It was a father and a son um, who perpetrated that shooting, uh, and you wonder why do they feel so bad about things?
but that's
Uh,
ideological, Vince. They were radicalized in ideology. This is not isolated incidents of mental illness. They're ideologies about going and taking over the West, about killing people
yeah,
who are
exactly.
not
But
certain ways. And so this is, you know,
but people who are susceptible to those ideologies, so those ideologies themselves are built by people who are broken, and then it attracts other broken people, and that's how it ends up. And so when we end up with Trump getting elected because of that same reason, right?
but
It
Trump
just
doesn't have an ideology of going out and bombing people. In other words, this
oh
is a different type
yes
of
he
ideology.
does. Look what he's doing with Venezuela at the moment. But anyway,
Mm,
yeah, no, but I get it. It's a self-defense mechanism that people get into, and they
mm.
don't need to do that if they were understood, and things could. Yeah, I mean it is theoretical. I mean the practical thing is that we can only work at a personal level, can't we? We
Yeah, and the
can't work at
practical thing is, how do I stay in peace? In other words, tomorrow I can be in peace one day and not another. That's the only level I can work at, and I can't even do that level. So,
mm, yeah. So you can see there's a classic example there for you. You can see you're willing, and yet it's so difficult for you. So
mm,
how would it be possible for those who are not willing? It's probably impossible, eh?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Yeah. So how do we trip you into recognizing something? That's that's the big one.
Hmm.
And that's what I see we need to do. We need for you to recognize something, and that means that we have to get you past these screens that stop you from experiencing that recognition. And these screens are your ideology about control, amongst
Well,
others. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't even need to wake up per se if I could just be at peace all the time. You know what I mean?
Yes, if sure, yeah, yep, and I can go along with that. There's a lot of people who are not awake who are quite at peace, and that's fine. I certainly wouldn't want to disrupt that peace for anybody. Um, but my thoughts, I guess, now I'm hesitating because I'm not sure whether it's what it is, but I'll just say my thoughts are that there's a paradox there, that we how can we is finding peace, can that happen at a halfway point towards waking up, or is it either not going to happen and then peace arrives when it does happen, or can peace turn up otherwise? Yeah, that's a very hard one, that one. So if you could manipulate your control in order to have peace all the time, you'd be quite happy with that. And I'd be very happy for you if that could happen. But you see, because the way I see it is that's an unresolvable paradox, that when you are in control, that also opens you up to judgment about failure when you're not in control. And you certainly, and see, the thing is, the way I see control is that if you actually had control, you would have it all the time. You can't have partial control. If you're in control, you've got control. That's it, full stop. You've got control. So if sometimes you're not in control, that shows you that you never actually had control. It just shows
Well,
you that sometimes the illusion is active.
but maybe it's black and white thinking. In other words, some people say like breathing, we can breathe when we sleep. In other words, it's not, but we can also affect it and take a deep breath. So maybe it's something like that, that we have partial control.
Yeah, okay. So uh, where does the level of control go to? So you can hold your breath for so many seconds, but you can't hold it beyond that.
And I can't decide to be a bird and fly. In other words, yes, there are very much limits to what we control, but
Yes. And what actually does have control is our bodily functions in this case, right? So that's why you can't you can you can affect, and your intention does affect what happens. There's no question about that. I'm not certainly not denying that's the case, but your intention comes from somewhere that we don't actually know about. It just arises. And the intention, so there's two parts to your intention. Let's say there is the impulse to do something, and then there is a narration about it. Right? And the narration about it, without doubt, comes after the impulse. But where did the impulse come from? It's dependent on a slew of conditions, and some of those conditions would be your native ability to do that, and other conditions are more circumstantial, right? So if you decide that you can walk 100 miles, whether you can or not, at the beginning, the first 5 steps you take, it might seem like, yeah, you'll easily walk 100 miles, but by the time you've walked 10 miles, you're starting to feel tired and everything changes, doesn't it? So you've got the ability. Now, if you've been in training, your ability is bigger. Now, whether you've been in training or not depends on lots of things. So you could say that, yes, I could have controlled. I could have. This is the thing with control. It's always about I could have if that was different, right? So when you walked across the room to sit at your computer and talk to me, you walked in a certain way, and you can now look back and you can go, well, I could have walked around the room in the other direction. I could have walked from that side of the room, or I could have hopped over instead of walking. I could have, everything you could have done, but you didn't. What you did was what you did, and it was dependent on circumstances. And some of those circumstances were that you didn't even think about it. You just did it. Or if you did think about it, it was not whether you could do it or not, but rather which way would you go. I
So you
bet you
think
find that you've walked and missed walking into the furniture without even realizing that you've done it.
so you really think there is zero control, not over any thought, any intention, any effort? In other words, when you say all we can do is notice and then things change, but I can't even do the noticing, like how far do you take this?
Mm. Um, Certainly, it's not 100% like you say. What we do is we bring a certain effect to, right? So and there's very definitely an illusion of control, but that comes afterwards. That's when you say, "Oh yes, I could have walked around the room differently to get to this chair, or I could have worn different clothes today than what the ones I put on." Right? But the reality is that circumstances led things to happen the way they happened. Right now, to say that afterwards that I could have done it differently is just a story that you've added to this what actually happened. So we're not talking about 100%. We're not saying that your thoughts don't have some effect about what goes on. Um, but they're just some of the conditions that are involved.
And you're saying that even if my thoughts have an effect, I didn't have any effect on which thoughts I was thinking. In other words, you're saying there is zero control? Because sometimes you say, like, if we're aware of things, things change, but even over that, we have no control, or you think we do? I guess my question is there anything further that I can be doing? Like, how, when I have a few days of peace after weeks of horrible storms internally, is
Mm.
there anything I can do while I'm lucid, while I'm less in pain, to deepen the peace, to organize my
Yeah,
life, make sure it doesn't come back like that?
there is for sure. There is things that you can do. Again, things that will happen because of maybe this conversation, because of the thoughts that turn up for you about what's possible, and so on. So yes, when you're in a calm state, your ability to see what goes on is much bigger and better than when you're in an uptight state. So definitely, yes, you can influence, but again, where does the thought turn up to do that? Do you know what your next thought's going to be? Can you make a thought come up about something? Or can you just let's say you decide I'm going to have a thought about pink elephants. Where did that come from? Why pink elephants and not unicorns? Right? You don't control what thoughts are going to turn up, but they are influenced by a whole lot of things, by conditions. And some of those conditions, and a very important part of those conditions, is your experience, your history. Right? If you think more about pink elephants than you do about unicorns, it's obviously more likely that you'll think about pink elephants than unicorns, just because that's where what you've always done. So there's a lot of involvement, but again, it is simplistic. There's no question. I'm not denying that we're looking at this at a simplistic level in order to break a fundamental bond, fetter, if you like, that of being controlled by our ideas that we are controlled. Once we can break that, then we can fine tune it, and we can. So, in the beginning, we say most of your thoughts. We could even go as far as to say all of your thoughts, but it's only a beginning way of looking at things, right? Are just thoughts, and so consequently, we need to have thoughts about thoughts. We need to consider what effect our thoughts might have. And once we can break that initial bond, then we can start fine tuning it, and then things become different at a detailed level. But in the beginning, it's if I say belief in any thought is going to cause problems, and later on we'll get a lot more, have a lot more finesse about that. But in the beginning, we just need to break that initial bond where we believe every thought. Because your thoughts and your thought patterns are all conditioned, aren't they? Is it clear to you that that's the case? The way you think is habitual. I mean, I did read somewhere we have 90,000 thoughts a day, but something like 75,000 of those, or 78, I don't know, pluck a figure, are repetitions of the same thoughts we had the day before.
Yeah, I can imagine that. We have patterns for sure.
Yeah. So it's those patterns that we're looking to break, and then introduce much more adaptive patterns.
Hmm.
But we're not meaning to get away from patterns altogether, because they're very useful. We don't want to have to start thinking about what we do when we tie our shoelaces, although we'd like to have the option to do that, to be aware of what's going on. Right
Hmm.
over left, left over right, tie the bow, pull it tight, etc. But we we don't need to. We can do it automatically, and be thinking about where we're going, or what's going to happen in the next moment, while we tie our shoelaces. That's very practical to have that automatic stuff there. But a whole lot of those habits are problem causing. So
But
somehow, yeah, go on.
I guess the only question is, um, and recognizing that, what can be done? In other words, that's what I'm here to say. I recognize that a lot of my patterns are problematic. I yell at myself all day, which is another pattern, which is
Hmm.
problematic, not helping. But so I'm trying to be more accepting. It's harder on harder days. And just, is there anything else that I can be doing? But I guess you're just
Mm.
saying, noticing. I mean,
Yeah. So what if you were to accept, say, as a tentative uh, ideal, let's just call it that for the moment. Let's say that you can adopt tentatively the possibility that you are not actually in control of everything that happens, but that every happening is dependent on current conditions, circumstances, including those that are mental and those that are historical, etc., right? Then the huge thing that will happen is you'll stop judging yourself. You stop coming to a conclusion that there's something wrong with you because you're not always in a calm state. Now that itself is going to let go of a huge amount of stress and anxiety and bodily contraction and tension. And of course, when our body's all tense, we produce more formic acid in our muscles, and we have um, not feel good hormones, whatever they are, floating around in our body that cause us to feel irritable and so on. So just not judging ourselves as a result of accepting the possibility that we're not totally in control is a huge start in changing your experience.
Yeah, I do get that.
Yeah. So if I say to you, would you be prepared to try it for an hour? Not a day, not a week, just an hour to try, remind yourself every time you find yourself adamant about anything, recognizing that there's a judgment involved and letting go of that a softening will happen for 1 hour. And it's not just about how you feel, it's about, well, it's about what happens as well as what you feel, of course. So, as an experiment, would you be willing to do that?
It depends which hour. If I'm perfect in that hour, then yes, I can accept it.
Yeah. Well, choose your hour. Choose it at a time when you're most likely to feel calm and relaxed.
Yeah. No, I think I have been working on it a little bit. It's just it's hard when I'm stuck on the couch or indecision, or it takes me 5 hours to do something that should take 5 minutes, or like just writing a
Mm,
simple email to someone or WhatsApp can take me hours till I figure out what I want to say and the right words and the right message and
yeah.
what would be most productive. It could take me like 2 days to complete it, or just how I'm not focused about my life. And I would wish I knew if to be more organized or less, if to be more controlling, or like all the questions that I constantly have. An indecision, if I could figure it out, how to. But yeah, I have been trying to soften that a bit because bulldozing, is not working as well. So
Hmm. So then what I'm asking you to do, you're already doing to some
I've been
extent.
trying, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what if we fine tune that a little bit and just say, as an experiment, pick 5 minutes. You don't have to be an hour even. Pick 5 minutes where
Yeah.
every time you catch yourself judging or having an opinion about something, you just let it go for 5 minutes. Just allow it to be in the background and not engage with it and relax into or move your focus towards relaxing into whatever's actually happening for you.
Yeah.
Now, if we
And you're
start with 5 minutes, that can be that, and that has a good effect, then we can easily extend it.
yeah. And you're saying start when things are good, not wait until things are bad to practice this.
Yeah, there's two things there. Of course, you're going to be much more able, much more capable when things are good, right? But when things are bad is your biggest opportunity. But of course, it's harder to do it then.
Yeah.
So you might actually try both. You might say, well, I'm going to try this when I'm feeling good, And then the next time you realize that you're giving yourself a hard time, you could also try it then. That would be a possibility.
Yeah, I guess the problem arises for me when I do it when I'm not feeling well and it doesn't work to dissolve the not good. In other
Yes,
words,
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's when you have another judgment about yourself, isn't it? I failed.
Vince gave me homework and I can't even do that. I'm trying to accept, but I can't. But yeah.
Yeah. So here's an interesting one. There's a metacognition. So there's cognition, and then there's cognition about your cognition. Cognition about awareness. There's awareness. There's being aware, and then there's being aware that you are being aware. That's
Yeah.
what I call metacognition, right? And so when you go, I've got this to do and I'm not even able to do it, then can you step back out of that and go, I'm aware that I'm annoyed about the fact that I can't do it.
Yes, I am aware of the big picture. It's just that in those times, the system, I can't explain to you, Vince, how noisy it is in the body and my, the whole system is so overwhelmed. I can't even describe it. So
Mm,
it's,
mm. Yeah,
mm,
yeah, yeah.
I
That's
think
part of the
clarity,
problem, isn't
but
it? Yeah,
yeah, it's not like having clarity, but a point of pain. Of course, I can be fine with that. It's like when the whole system is so frazzled, but I'm doing my best. That's it, all I can do, I guess.
yeah. So if we were to introduce an awareness of the fact that you're feeling bad, not being competent, not succeeding, whatever,
Can't calm down.
in yeah, when you are aware that you're aware of that, you can only be aware of the awareness from outside of the situation. You're not lost in it. You can be aware that you're lost in it and still be lost in it. But you can't be aware that you're aware of the fact that you're lost in it and still be in it. Is that too subtle? too too convoluted?
Maybe because I think I've always been aware and being able to both be in something and describe it to someone and say, "What the heck is going on? I can't get
Yes.
out of it." So I'm
Yeah.
always both. It's just that it when it doesn't dissolve it, when it's not enough, then I get upset. But
Yeah. So what if we added that extra flavor of being aware that you are aware and still in it?
okay.
And again, it's an experiment. So it's
Yeah.
when that possibility turns up that you can do that and it works, you'll suddenly go, oh, okay, I'm that took me out of it. Or it didn't take me out of it. So what actually happened was I stopped being aware that I was aware and I was just aware.
I
And of
think
course,
that we're talking about two different levels, I think. I mean, when I'm completely when the level of pain or frazzledness is too much and nothing can get me out of there, then
yeah. So it's an
okay.
experiment again. So if you're in that state and then you become aware that you're in that state, at the same time as you become aware that you're in that state, you'll become aware that you are aware of being in that state. And when you recognize that, it will change things for you. If it
But
doesn't,
it
you
doesn't change the fact that there's can be incredible pain or dysregulation in the system. It doesn't change the fact that my body doesn't want to breathe deeply in certain situations or that the noise is affecting it. In other words, there's some things that physiologically doesn't change. Pain,
mm, mm,
contraction, affecting by noise, affecting by other things. affecting my lack of sleep, whatever it is, those things can't be changed by awareness, it seems. But I don't know.
Right. But experiment with the possibility that awareness of awareness can change them.
Okay.
Now it may not, and if that's the case, then you're not probably not being aware that you're aware. You're only just being aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mind is incredibly agile. You know, you can be aware and still be in it. But to be aware that you are aware is almost impossible to still be in it.
Maybe we're talking about two different things. In other words, it's not that magically the pain is going to go away.
Oh
It's that,
no, no. Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
okay, okay.
Yeah, we're not talking about making the pain go away. We're talking about transforming, and it will happen. It's not something we're doing, but the happening will occur that we will adopt a different attitude towards the pain. The pain will still be there,
Oh, okay, okay,
right?
yeah,
But we won't be adding the suffering. The second arrow thing won't happen,
right.
right?
Okay,
Or
that I
yeah,
see, yeah.
yeah,
I can be in less blame about it a little bit, or less blame
yes,
that I am in blame. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and that blame, of course, is judgment, isn't it?
yeah,
Mm. It's a tricky one, and look, I get that the overwhelming nature of the primary thing is huge, right? And what we're looking for is a tiny sliver of light of a some kind of a doorway as a metaphor, a doorway that's just slightly cracked open enough so that there's a tiny sliver of light there. And what we need to do is head to there and know that because of that light, that door is unlatched and we can push it open. But that's entirely metaphorical, of course. But that's what we're looking for. You know, we're overwhelmed by the primary experience, and what we need to be doing, what we want to be doing, is looking for that sliver of possibility. What in the midst of that? Now it's a tricky one because if that thing is having 100% effect, you're not even thinking about that sliver of light. But if you're thinking of that sliver of light, then that it's only 98% or 99% of overwhelm from the other stuff. There's that 1% that allows you to adopt a different perspective on it. And so
yeah,
consequently, we're not saying we're magically going to disappear the pain. What we're going to do is recognize that there's a level of the pain that is physical, and then there's the level of the suffering which is added to that. And a huge proportion of your experience is suffering, not pain. Whereas I'm imagining that you're
of
seeing it
that.
all as pain. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure about that, but
Mm.
like especially with jackhammers, lack of sleep, Crohn's,
Yeah.
inflammation,
Yep.
I'm not
Yep. All
entirely
of that.
sure
Yeah.
most of it is me, but um, I and I think we saw the limits of that the other week when I had lack of sleep, jackhammers outside, Crohn's on the inside. It was
Mm.
tremendous pain. I was able to sink into the eye of it, especially on the meeting, but it still had a tremendous effect on my system that lasted for days afterwards and put me
Yeah.
into a
Yeah.
flare. In other
I,
words, it was tremendous.
yes, I get
Yeah,
that. I hear you. I hear you.
yeah,
It's huge. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had a great example today, a great experience today. So my wife and I, we've been trying to walk 10,000 steps every day, and that's been going on for a few weeks now. And we went for a walk the dog and came back, and because it was early, we went early, so it wasn't so hot. And when we got back, I was a bit buggered. Um, But I also like to, I've got this exercise bike and I like to get on that and do a bit as well. So that's come at the same time as doing the 10,000 steps. Anyway, I got on it and as I pedaled it, I could feel this pain in my hip. And I thought, oh, this is not good. I better not push it now. So I stopped and then went on with my day doing other things. And then later on in the day, I did some more walking and I came back and I had another go on the bike and the pain wasn't there. It was different. What had happened? I have no idea. I don't know why the original pain was there, but it was like it was telling me, don't push it now. Right? So I didn't. But I didn't see it as um, a permanent thing that was going to be made that I end up needing a hip replacement or anything like that. You know, it was like, okay, here it is just now. Is it just the angle that that I'm doing when I'm pedaling, or what's going on? You know. But turned out later on, I was able to sit there and pedal for 12 kilometres, and I didn't have that pain back at all. It was gone. I have no idea what it was about, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. You know, does it mean that my hip's degrading and I'm eventually going to need a hip replacement? I don't know. You know what I'm saying is I didn't I didn't come to some conclusion about it. I was open to say, well, this is what's here now, and let's just respond to that at the moment. Not There was no second arrow stuff saying, oh, you know, I'm gonna need surgery or it's gonna be a big problem for me. I mean, it might or it might not. I don't know. But I'm not concerned about that right now. Just a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, when it's recurring things, it's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying.
Well, here's another one. We just had our Bowls Christmas party last week, and it was at the Bowls Christmas party exactly a year ago now, and right now, a year and 3 days ago, right, that I was dancing, and I don't normally, you know, I'm not a great dancer, but I was up there dancing, and I hurt my knee dancing, and I realised the next day that I'd done it when I was dancing. And you know what? For that whole year, I've experienced sensations off and on with that knee. And it says to me, I've got to look after that knee or it could be a serious thing. And it's been going on for a year. Now, again, I don't know that means anything other than it takes a long time for things to heal in a body that's as old as this one is, or what. I don't know. But it's just there and it's just on the edge of my consciousness that I do need to, if I experience sensations in that knee, when I walk up a flight of stairs on our walk, I always push up with my left foot and not my right foot for that same reason. I don't want to exacerbate that knee because when I do it with my right foot, I can feel it. So I just look after it, I just nurse it. But I don't know what it means, except that I feel a sensation, full stop. That's what all it means.
Yeah.
Mm. I guess I'm trying to say if we stay in the present and look at a primary description rather than adding stories about what it might mean, it reduces the level of anxiety and stress in the body.
Yeah. I guess I always go into wanting to read patterns, read signals, be 10 steps ahead, fix my life, make sure I'm optimizing. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
goes back to that grief about watching things not be optimal in myself and others, and things
Mm,
could be
mm.
much better. Why can't I figure it out? But
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
So
not
it's a
the
lot
right.
of meaning making there, isn't there?
Maybe, yeah.
So I am ultimately patient about you waking up. I can't predict whether you will or not, but I have good feelings. I like you. I like spending time with you, talking with you. Um, so it'll happen or not. So that's it. We don't we don't need to we don't need to have a story that we settle on. So let's try this. Jed, tell Tammy how things have changed for you in your experience, not about why, just what you experience that's now different for you than what it was when I first met you.
Oh, let's see. Well, what comes to mind is this whole thing about stories. Yeah, that seems like such a big change in how I relate to thinking. Um, and not all the time, but often I'm conscious of. I mean, usually some kind of negative story. When I say negative, it might be a worry or a criticism of somebody or a rumination and generally I see that as something that my mind does, something that happens in my mind. Um, but I'm not like immediately concerned and engaged and with those stories most of the time. So that just kind of keeps a degree of a degree of calm, I suppose, um, that is different, and a degree of kind of acceptance, I suppose, of just okayness with what's going on and what people are doing and what's happening in my life and the world and what's happening in my story making space.
So this is a little bit trickier a question. Did you do that, or did it somehow happen?
Well, my my default response to that now is that it just happened, um, and I'm kind of I'm into questioning that as well, and because I think there's a kind of degree of subtlety around it that hasn't quite settled for me, um, and I'm still kind of curious about what it actually means. So that, yeah, I guess I want to have a way of understanding or a way of seeing that fully makes sense to me. But generally, I'd say no, it just happened. Um, and I have an experience of being part of the process of that happening. Um, and I believe that everything I do and think and choose is all a result of what's gone before, which means that in a way it's not really a choice or a doing. Um, yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, the subtlety of it is really interesting, isn't it? So there can be this sense of doing, which is just a way of describing a perception of your experience. And if you were to talk about it with somebody, then you would have to put it in terms of a doing, because there's no other way they could understand what what you're talking about, except for doing that. But yes, there is that that aspect of it that says, well, where did the idea come from? It popped up, and then I acted on the idea. Well, did you act on the idea, or was the impulse to act there and then the idea followed? So that's where the subtlety comes in, and it's really hard to see that one until you do. Once you see it once, it's easy to see it from then on. But it's a little bit more tricky,
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
I mean, I have seen that, and and often I yeah, I don't believe that there's a doer. Um, I think there's something about the idea that all my choices, um, everything's built on the infinite causes and conditions.
So have you got any thoughts about how Tammy can move from feeling like she's totally succeeding or failing as a causer of everything that happens to her into recognizing that those conditions are involved?
Where are you at with that, Tammy? What's your response to when Vince says that?
Um, no, I totally recognize that there's so many causes and conditions. I just think that I should have, come on, it's been several decades now. What are you, an idiot? Figure it out. Like, in other words, I should have this down pat by now of, okay, the causes and conditions are not new. There's the pain, there's the noise, there's the sensitivity, there's the family, there's the, in other words, just wanting to have this figured out by now. So when I go into I've had now a few days of peace. I'm good. People are screaming, I'm Buddha, I'm at peace, I'm accepting it all, and then I go into and then the next day or the next hour or a week later, my brain is completely foggy. I'm spending 17 hours trying to formulate one email. Can't focus on my life. What is wrong with me? I'm not, leading my life well. I'm sitting on the couch 5 hours in pain, listening to the jackhammer instead of getting the heck out of the house. Like, why can't I seem to organize my life well? Or getting stuck in the pain of it or the whatever, and can't seem to just have a productive, normal, sane mind and life. And that's where I'm like, what is up? And why can't I make this work and whatever? Or just take one example, like when I'm stuck for hours and I can't really move in pain and I can't think clearly, and then I'm just very down on myself. But and stuck in stuff. So I'm just, when I'm more clear and calm and lucid, I'm like, dude, or not dude, Vince, what can I do to not go into those things? But I guess the only thing is awareness and sensitivity and keep being aware. I don't know. It's just my whole life has been ups and downs of Buddha and hell. So I'm like, can it be less hellscape? But so that's what I'm here to find out. But I don't know. And Vince is saying, don't blame yourself for either one, and yet try to be aware of being aware. So I'm trying to figure out what is being said and what I can do.
So you started off by saying that you do understand this. I mean, it's this framing of things through causes and conditions.
I mean, I think we all do, right? In other words, everything that's happened to my life has caused, and the nervous system I was born with has caused different patterns to be present. Like, yeah, we all, I mean, it's like,
That makes perfect sense to you. That's what you're
yeah,
saying. Yeah. And then also, there are times when some part of you gets frustrated with the way things are. Would that be fair to say?
exactly. And very much affected by all of the self-help kind of things and also the whether it's Louise Hay, you can heal your life. Like if you have Crohn's, it's just anger, just get rid of it. In other words, this the subtle blaming of the person, or why don't you just manifest and vibrate at a different frequency type things and attract different things into your life, or just get a life coach, or just get a therapist. In other words, the idea that or therapy that talks about well there's a secondary gain or you're being resistant or something's wrong with you and you have to that you're or else you'd already have this figured out by now. There must be something either bad or resistant or gaining something from it, like all these ideas about that also like all these kind of I don't know if that you can relate to those, but ideas about I must be like I need to figure out what's stopping me from, in other words, I should have I have what it takes. I'm just not actualizing it. So something's wrong with me or I'm not trying hard enough or in the right way or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And how does that?
I'm just feeling bad
Um,
for everyone on YouTube that has to listen to my crazy musings for hours. I'm sorry, everyone.
well, nobody
Okay,
has
go
to,
on.
do they? They're either
That's
choosing
true.
to or not choosing to, or you know.
You, I feel mortified a lot of the time, but thank you. Oh God.
So you've so all that stuff you said to me then, which was about why are you not actualizing it?
Mm.
Um, so how do you? How does that sit with the the view you have that everything is to do with causes and conditions?
Because there's all of that, and then we are supposed to, that's what we're here for, to overcome, to fix, to heal, to mind over matter, spirituality over matter, transcendence, whatever you want to call it, that's what we're here to do, is to take all of those causes and conditions and find the fundamental peace that is path is all understanding, and we are, to live in that. So I'm trying to, and when I can't be that, then I'm like, well, that's on me.
So is that
And what is me besides more causes and conditions? I don't know, but there's a sense of that.
okay? So would it be fair to say there are kind of seems like there's kind of different parts of you operating at different times or together, or I don't know if it's together or taking turns or in a relationship with each other. There's the part of you that sees everything as causes conditions and is kind of Buddha, as you said, and then there's all these other parts of you that don't see it that way. Is that reasonable?
It more feels like there are times when I'm zen or in peace and everything can dance on top of that, but I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when I can't access that peace and I am full
Mm,
frontal mode. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? And why can't I get
mm,
back there? That's more my
mm,
experience. Like, why am I sane 1 minute and then totally caught up in pain and whatever? And then I start to diagnose. Is it ADHD? Is it autism? Is it Crohn's? Is it PTSD? Like, I just start to frantically search, or I try to not search, but that doesn't help either. Nothing I do seems to be able to bring me back to
mm.
the underlying peace. And lately, I've been trying to have some peace while the storm goes on, but it still ravages the system.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
get you.
yeah.
Yeah, I get you, I can relate to that. There are times when you can't get back to your Buddha self.
Yeah, I don't even call it Buddha. I don't know why that came out today. I just call it being, in deep, deep calm or peace or whatever.
Mm, yeah. Well, I can tell you what I have been doing recently, which is might or might not be of help.
Are
Um,
you are you here seeking to have a fundamental shift of realizing you're not a person, or are you here to find peace? Like, what are you here for? Sorry if it's too personal.
no, that's fine. Um, um, it changes for me. It's seems to be constantly evolving, changing, shifting, and it depends. It changes what I'm here for, but it usually seems to be something like to kind of get some feedback on where I'm at and how I'm currently seeing things. Maybe if there's a current challenge. Um, Sometimes it's to get some guidance. Sometimes it's um, to express what I'm experiencing or how I'm relating to my current experience, and I find it useful to sometimes, um, yeah, get some feedback to share it and see what people say about it. See if it just kind of helps me clarify. I think, and sometimes I've been and Vince has said things that have remind. Often it seems to be a reminder of things that I've forgotten, basically.
Hmm.
I think what fundamentally drives us all, everybody, all the time, is we just want to feel better.
Mm.
Well, go on, Vince. Don't leave us hanging. What do we do?
Well, what we do is stop making ourselves feel bad. What I say is that feeling good is a fundamental aspect of being a healthy human.
Hmm.
And so anything that takes us away from that is additional. So really, let's just remove that additional stuff and we can feel good again.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a recent explanation of the Four Noble Truths I heard. You know what that is, Tommy?
Is that the Ruiz thing?
It's kind of the one of the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. He kind of
Oh, okay.
laid out his worldview in this framework called the Four Noble Truths. And the first one is that there is dukkha, which they translate as suffering or stress or dissatisfaction. And the second one is that there is a cause. And then the third one is that there is a solution. And recently, the teacher I heard said the solution can be summed up as letting go. There are various different ways of saying that, but it does strike me that, as Vince says, we're generally doing something that is causing our dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and often it seems to be just stop doing that, just let it go, whatever it is,
Mm.
the habitual way of relating to something that's causing suffering.
Mm.
Can you just let it go?
Yeah, and it's a little simplistic, but accurate, I think. And that is that I've heard people say, and I'm a skeptic about people reporting what Buddha said or what Jesus said or whatever. But one of the things he said was that all suffering is caused by desire, that is, wanting something.
Yeah.
And we could be a little bit more uh, concise and say wanting something to be different
Hmm.
is a very, very big part of most people's suffering. And of course, that immediately excites the idea that, well, if I accept that I'm in pain, I'm going to be in pain, aren't I? Well, yes, you are going to be in pain, but you're not going to be in pain and suffering. You're just going to be in pain.
Yeah, and it's a particular kind of view of suffering, isn't it? That you're saying there, that suffering isn't experiencing pain; it's how we relate to that
Yes.
pain.
Yeah. But we can talk about it forever and not have it, not have the ability to experience it. It's the experiencing of it that will
Mm.
allow a change to occur. And in your case, Tammy, it's not just experiencing it, it's experiencing it without taking credit for doing it. Because if you take credit for doing it, you have to take the opposite for failing,
Mm.
and neither are the case. See, so I come back to an analogy I use frequently: hitting a golf ball. Now, if I hit a golf ball nice and straight, I feel joy. If I hit it and it slices off into the bush, I feel a bit disappointed. But in no case do I take the credit or the blame. It is just conditions that caused it to happen. Not my fault. It just happened. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly, will I try and do better next time? Of course I will. And sometimes that might translate into standing differently or thinking differently or something along those lines. But they're all an experiment. After 38 years of playing golf, I still can't hit it straight every time, but I can sometimes. Or sometimes it goes straight and sometimes it doesn't. Full stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get enough straight ones to get enough joy to keep going back and
Mm.
doing it.
So I don't know if to put it this way, but will my balls straighten out? In other words,
Mm.
Yeah.
Or will I just have to accept that that sometimes it's like that, or do we get to have it improve when we accept more? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's kind of both, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like you have to accept where you're, and you don't have to, but it's wise to accept the way things are, and things might improve.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if you see, I play with a bloke who's actually quite a good player, but every time he hits a bad shot, he really gets up himself. And I've seen him slam his golf club into the ground, and he really, and then I've watched him bugger up the next shot because he was so upset. I'm still upset about the last shot.
Yeah.
So it's removing that kind of, it doesn't mean that we hit all straight balls. It just means that we're not going to hit more stupid balls because we're still upset about the last shot. So because we're relaxed about it, because we're not blaming or taking credit, we're more open to seeing what's actually involved.
What about ballerinas or people that work day and night for, 8 hours
Yeah.
a day to perfect something? Like maybe that's what's needed to move forward.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And some of those get really good, and a whole lot of them fall by the wayside because they're not up to it, eh?
That's true as well. All right, so we're
And
back to questions. Sorry, Jed.
a whole lot of them end up with really severe joint problems from
Mm,
overworking.
yeah, good point. Yeah, only a few of them become prima ballerinas.
Mm. Yeah. And the circumstances involved in those ones includes their genetics as
Yep,
well as their training, not
yep,
just one or the other. Yeah.
agreed. Yeah. Isn't it crazy though that we're so powerless? Like, why can't it go according to our intention and willpower and desire and effort? It's so crazy.
Well, it seems crazy because we're told that we can control things all the time, and it seems so radical that we're saying that you can't.
Yeah, especially as they say in the dark ages, people just either you were born a prince or you were born a serf and you just accepted your position. But today we can be
Yeah,
anything we want. We could be president if we so desire. That's how we're raised, right? You can be the president. Like, and so that's what we think that if we just want it, we can work hard and make anything happen. And when that doesn't happen, we're like, dude, but you said like what? Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, and it's almost like this is our generation's snake oil. Yeah,
Mm,
Yeah. And
people are
it's an
making a
interesting
fortune
one.
selling it.
Yeah. There was a generation where we were told that we have to tell our kids that they're special. They're all special. And it wasn't the generation I was brought up in. I
Mm-hmm.
was brought up to believe that I was the opposite. Kids should be heard and not seen, or seen and not heard.
yeah, my
Yeah.
parents were told that. Yeah.
Mm.
And we just believe, we get blinkered in the whatever bubble we exist in. You know, it's such a. It seems to me that whatever the time, the place, people believe that the current culture's way of doing things is like radically better than everything that's gone before. We've finally worked it out and
Yeah.
seen how things really are and seen how to do things well, you know, and then the next generation will come along and probably throw it out and do the opposite or something completely different.
Yeah.
Mm.
I remember I was doing a sociology course at university, and it was something about it was criminology, and they went through the various stages of evolution of the way the view of understanding criminality, and it's quite a new science, so it'd only been going for about 100 years or something. And they said, well, first of all, when it started off in the 1900s, this is the way they understood the criminal mind. Obviously, we see now, that was a real mistake and they were quite stupid back then. Then the next generation came along and this is how they saw it. And it was an improvement, but obviously we see the limitations of that view now. And they went along and then now finally, we've got it. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, have you not just explained to me that every generation sees it differently? What makes you think this one's right?
Yeah. It's because it's ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Jed, did you come with questions or something to look at today?
Um, so the thing that I've been, um, handling is, um, I've been kind of looking a bit at Jung and the idea of archetypes, you know, um, um, and for some reason, I've yeah, it's come round again for me, this way of looking at things. I've, a few times, and and every time I get to it, it really seems to um, bring some peace somehow. Um, um, and so, my current experience of it is when stuff happens in my personality that challenging in some way. Um, the difference is rather than so previously, say last week, um, I would just feel it as an energy, say, or as an emotion or as something, and relate to it in whatever way. Now I'm seeing it as a kind of an archetype, acting. Um, and there's something about that lens, that framing, that I don't know, somehow it seemed easier to relate to rather than just an energy or an emotion or a something more. It's like somehow personifying it, or you know
Hmm.
giving it a name. Say, I know it's a story, um,
Does
but
it just seem more personal for you?
I don't think it seems more personal in a way, because it's kind of impersonal, because it's the collective unconscious. That's the way I'm seeing it. The archetype of the victim, say, or I don't know. Let's just use that one. Is universal. It's not necessarily me personally. It's just an energy that seems to operate in human psyche. Um, it's almost like it's easier for me to let it go and not identify with it. Um, I don't know why, but um, and I'm remembering that that's happened in the past. It just seems to settle things into a framework that I can then just go, oh, okay, that's what's happening. Um,
So it's almost the
and
opposite of personalizing it.
I think so, yeah. And I
Mm.
can let it do its thing without, without as much attachment, without as much. I guess that's what it is. Yeah, I hadn't quite seen it in those terms, but without identifying with it.
So would you see it as being more in touch with the the accumulation of everything in your environment and in your world?
Um,
So less separation, more inclusive.
could you ask me that again? I didn't quite get it.
So I'm just thinking that the way you described the archetypal situation is is it's an accumulation of everything from your own biology right through to the effect of society as in general and the world and everything. You know, there's
Yeah,
nothing is excluded.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like I kind of see it as part of our immense history of coming through
Mm.
um microorganisms and
Yeah,
lizards and mammals and everything. The way humanity is in the biggest possible picture just happens to have these energy patterns
yeah,
in the
yeah.
consciousness.
Right, yeah. So would it does it depreciate it at all if I say to you, it sounds a bit like you're having a non-dual experience?
um what I would say is not non-dual about it is that actually, no, that's true. It kind of goes in and out. At times, there's this kind of separate sense of witnessing the archetypes, and then there's that dissolves. Yeah, is that what you mean?
Kind of. I don't know. I was just
Yeah.
just trying to kind of get closer to what you were experiencing, that's all.
Okay.
Mm.
Well, I suppose my actual experience of it is, well, it's so hard to try and describe that, isn't it?
Mm, mm. Of course it is, yeah. I mean, you don't have to go very deep before it's impossible to describe.
Yeah.
Mm.
But what is significant for me is that it seems to, um,
Invoke a letting go.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
And I mean, this has come about because I was talking to a good friend of mine who's on this path, but I would say probably a good bit further along it than I am, maybe. Um,
Excuse me laughing at that one. Mm.
I always go to him. Well, I often go to him to talk about this stuff, and it's always useful.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, he's kind of. We were talking about the what can seem like a kind of transcendent approach of which I think I've been at of just identifying with the just I'm going to go with that, just identifying as the big self and not paying any attention to it, just letting it all kind of dismissing all the psyche stuff.
Mm.
um, um, but then kind of noticing that the psyche can still kind of um, be compelling or cause a kind of suffering or that it's hard to just completely rise above it all the time, and that there's probably some usefulness in doing some healing work, whatever that means, or um, and so I mean, I don't know if that language is ultimately useful, but um, what's what I've come to is that the healing is just in seeing it and in just in kind of
Mm.
not resisting it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think this, so that's why this seems useful, because it's allowing me to see
Mm.
it in a way and not resist it.
Yeah. Seeing it is huge, especially for you, because you're constantly
Right. Seeing,
yeah,
doing something with my seeing.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good trick. I mean, the idea of healing something used to be that it needs to be different, and now the idea of healing it is to allow it and just not. Well, it's even not even true to say not engage with it, but well, it just is what it is. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's irrelevant if we want to classify it as something that needs healing or otherwise.
Mm. Yeah.
So we're not looking for perfection. There's no such thing as perfection anyway. I mean,
Mm.
and so
Mm.
to never feel pain, to always be happy or whatever is just they're ridiculous stories. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm finding a bit that, yeah, it's like allowing these, call them archetypes, to kind of be and express
Mm.
in me in a way is meaning that I don't quite haven't tried to articulate this so far, but it's something like it's like an emotion or a view, an attitude can take over more. Um, so, for example, feeling angry, say, for example, or being resentful or something. It's like it's having space to be and move, and then I'm kind of going, oh, is this better or worse? I'm not really, and I think it's better because I'm not resisting it, and it's and but it's like challenging me to go. It's okay to for this to be expressing in me now,
Mm.
and and it's kind of a sense of that being healthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what about the possibility of a slight shift in perspective on that? And it's okay for you to express as that
Yeah,
when it
that's
happens. Yeah,
nicely articulated. Yeah, yeah,
because we are our current experiencing.
yeah,
It's beautiful. It's just that just almost makes me want to cry. It's so encompassing and fulfilling and sweet.
yeah, yeah. Me too. I felt
Whatever that current experiencing is, that's what we are. Yeah.
yeah. And what came up for me is previously my current experiencing was resisting that. And that was my then
Mm.
experiencing. But it doesn't feel as sweet as, not resisting.
Yes. Yeah. 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 We're seduced all the time into defining it. That's where a problem rolls in. Uh, as soon as we try and define it, we limit and judge and so on.
Mm,
Mm. So when it comes down to it, it's this, which is way too complex to describe, to define.
mm,
Yeah. And I don't even know what this is. I just have a bit of a glimpse at it. I just know a little bit of what it is.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that kind of metaphor of the elephant, isn't it? In the dark room, with the many
Oh,
people.
yeah, perfect. Yes. Yeah. Oh, no, he's a tree trunk. Oh, no, he's
Yeah.
a...
A
yeah.
bit of rope.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. All right. Well, thank you, guys. I'm going to go back and spend an hour and 10 minutes with my wife before I've got a session with somebody. Uh,
Okay.
thank you both.
Cheers, Vince.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Love to be with you. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye, Tammy.
Tammy.